Setup, that's a Church City inside joke. And then I'm gonna roll it in, okay? So trigger warning, I'm gonna give you guys my testimony. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So in 2018, after coming to Church City, God delivered me from a toxic, emotionally, and at times physically abusive relationship. I had been in it for about 12 years since I was 17. And so this was definitely a soul tie situation that I took way too long to break out of. But the reason it took me so long was because I found out that year at Church City what love actually was. I didn't know what love was. Not only did I not know what it was, I realized that I didn't even love myself. And as I began studying Corinthians, I learned love happens to be several things that the dude I was dating was not. I'll never forget specifically Brother Fred preached a word and said, if you replace the word love in 1 Corinthians 13 with the name of the person you want to evaluate, you can ask yourself if that person displays traits of love. I used it, and once I noticed that love did not really exist in the relationship I was in, I prayed to God to remove it. Actually, I prayed for several things that year. My sis, Dejine, she came to Church City as an unmarried woman, and we were in the same, I don't know how they talk about church talk, I wasn't raised in church, but we were in the same cohort of entry to Church City that year. And she talked about a list that led her to find her husband. She made a list. And then I remember Sister Shelly talking about another moment in her life where she used a list to help her. So I decided to write a list of what I wanted to take into 2019 and what I wanted to leave behind in 2018. I wrote the list in November. By New Year's, everything on it came true or was in the process. The top 3 things on the list was 1, get out. That was the relationship. Get baptized and get involved in church. By January 13, 2019, the last thing on this list I achieved was get baptized. Right? Philippians 4:6-7 says, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. The next battle I needed to conquer was my mom. Anybody got mommy issues? Oh, I have been financially contributing to my household since I was 16 years old. Due to the recession, it was difficult for my mom to keep a job. So to cover the gaps where unemployment and public assistance fell short, I worked at Pathmark 5 days a week since the 10th grade. Although high school is when signs of depression and low self-esteem started to become visible to others, it was not something new to me. The first time I ever cut was when I was in 3rd grade. I dropped the glass on the floor by accident. Mom got upset, and I believe she called me a name. Idiot is usually the go-to, but I was in 3rd grade. And she had me clean it up. In my mind, as an 8-year-old, the narrative I told myself was that if my mom is making me clean up glass off of the floor, then she doesn't really love me. Because why would you make a kid pick up glass? That's what I thought. So I took the glass and used it to pierce my skin. By 17, I was fully engaged in self-injurious behaviors. Getting into college was a blessing, it was an escape, it was a refuge, and it was the door that God used to save me. That is where I got to be enlightened about mental health. I started getting counseling, I was involved, I did all these programs, internships. I was loving it. I was living my best life in Albany until I graduated. And I had to come home, back to the place where all my traumas and issues were waiting for me. On the ride home from graduation, my mom felt it was appropriate to tell me how much rent I need to pay now that I've graduated college. This is on the car ride from the graduation back home. We having this discussion. Anybody else Caribbean? Okay. So on the ride, needless to say, I was offended and hurt. And that started the official mommy-daughter fight years. I had so much anger and resentment toward my mom that I used that toxic relationship as an escape. We said at the end of 2019 we would separate, my mom and I. December 2019, mom proposes, we purchase a house. By the end of 2020, COVID, delayed the new goal. And we decided to shoot for December 2021. We didn't meet that goal either. What my mom still has not learned about me is that even though she makes decisions based on her emotions, her daughter is a woman of her word despite her emotions. Right here is when I reflected on this for a moment, and I thought about when Jesus set his mother straight. Did y'all know Jesus set his mom straight?
Yeah.
In Luke chapter 2, like many imperfect parents, hopefully not too many, Joseph and Mary lost their son for 3 days. When they went back to find him in the temple at the kids' Bible school soaring, Mary asked him, parents always ask this when they lose their kids, why would you scare us like this? We were worried. I mean, it's been 3 days. I'm sure they were worried where he was. But I thought it was interesting that at 12-ish, he was 12 years old, he responded to his mom in this way, and he said, why were you searching for me? He asked. Didn't you know I had to be in my father's house? And they didn't even get it. Jesus is trying to remind his mother, Mary, about a piece of his identity that she overlooked. The reason why that piece is so important is because if she was focused on who Jesus is, then she would remember who he is connected to and would have gone to check the place that the Son of God would go first. The reality is that parents don't know who their children fully are either. However, they observe their children's patterns to infer what steps their child might make. But new circumstances causes personalities to reveal themselves. So now back to me. I needed to let my mom know that I was not giving any more extensions, and Jesus gave me permission to check her. My mom overlooked my pattern of achieving goals and accolades as a part of who I am. This would be no different. Private conversations were not working, so I had to pull in reinforcements. I did something I thought I would never do. I scheduled a meeting with Pastor Rich because I learned that I don't make goals to not accomplish them, and my mom does not always keep her word. So I asked for help. It was the most difficult thing I ever done, but since that meeting, my mom and I have not had any serious arguments. And here's more to it. We purchased a home in Connecticut in December 2022 as per our new deadline from after that meeting. I moved into my apartment on the 1st of December. We closed on the house on the 27th. This victory showed me that the wisdom and age are not always correlated. And I'm a model for my mother when it comes to sacrifice, discipline, follow through, and execution. Now, before I go to the last conflict, I want to add on to that made that even amplified, so you could even see how God covers us if we are born, if we do make mistakes and we do make decisions before we are born again, and how he covers it after the fact. So remember that toxic relationship? I did something that you should never do. I'm older, I'm wiser, I know that now. You don't now have to tell me. But that abusive, toxic relationship manipulated me into co-signing on a vehicle that he never paid, or he didn't pay. So that stopped us from getting a house the first time. Back in 2020, we tried, right? So now this time, we go through everything the paperwork is good. And then they emailed me and they said, oh, there's a delinquency on your account. And I was like, we back at this again. And I do not speak to that individual. Long story short, they said we would not be able to close on the house until the balance that's currently delinquent is removed. Because they can't sign off on a house if you have delinquencies current on your credit, I guess. I learned now. But what happened was, I was going to be upset, but I wasn't. You know why? Because did God tell me to do that? I was not living a life that God wanted me to live. So all the consequences that I still deal with from those decisions is not God's fault. It has nothing to do with God. But let me tell you how good God was. God had blessed me financially and helped me to steward my money, like the mind to steward my money so good that didn't even matter. I said, here, cover that and let's go. We closing on this house anyway. So God still covered the mistakes that I had made. So that, I don't know, the Spirit told me to tell you, I didn't write it down. All right, so this is the last part, winding down. This is like, if I get a little emotional, don't laugh at me, okay?
Never.
You're not gonna laugh,
Never.
but you know. All right, the last thing that I learned, and is super, super important, I think, is discerning my purpose. Anybody had that struggle before?
Yes.
Why am I here, God? What do you want from me? So discerning my purpose was the second thing. I'm sorry, I lost my spot. Just getting it back. Oh, okay, boom. The last part of my journey and the most transformative experience I've ever had was when God showed me my purpose. I was struggling professionally and I needed to know. My career goal was to become a school social worker, and because I literally became addicted to school, I achieved that goal before I hit 30. I honestly thought I did what I was supposed to. But the school I